I was standing near the punch table when I heard it. The remark that would, before the night was finished, change 3 lives and humiliate one woman who had never humiliated anyone in her life. "Send the plain one home," Miss Cordelia Vane said to her circle, not bothering to lower her voice. "She is wearing Aunt Philippa's curtains, I believe, or close enough to them." Laughter, bright, careless, and cruel, the kind that requires an audience to sustain itself. I turned. Across the ballroom of Dunmore House, beneath the full blaze of 400 candles, a young woman stood alone at the edge of the dancing. She had heard. Anyone within 20 feet had heard. But she did not flinch, did not look away, did not press her lips together or blink back tears in the obvious manner of a woman about to flee. She simply stood, hands folded, her chin at precisely the angle it had been before. A kind of courage so quiet it looked like stone, and I, who have seen men march into cavalry fire, found myself strangely moved by it. Her name was Miss Alara Finch. I knew the name only because my friend the Duke of Wycliffe had mentioned it, briefly, 3 weeks prior, in a tone he used for almost nothing. He had said, "There is a Finch girl lately come to her cousin's household. She speaks 4 languages, Holt, 4. And she brought 2 cases of books and no jewelry." He had said it as a man recounts a curious fact. I had filed it away as such and thought no more of it. Until tonight. The gown was indeed borrowed. It was old-fashioned and the color of faded rose, and it fit Miss Finch imperfectly across the shoulders. She wore no pearls, no drops at her ears, no ribbons threaded through her hair beyond one plain ivory clip. Around her, the daughters of earls and barons floated in silks the color of spring, white and pale green and blush, every one of them strung with their mother's best jewels. Miss Finch looked as though she had been placed among orchids in the wrong pot, and had decided to bloom regardless. She had not been asked to dance, not once in the full first hour. I had watched, though I had not meant to watch. Her cousin Cordelia had made certain of it. A word here, a glance there, the small artillery of a woman who understood social architecture precisely because she had spent years building walls with it. By 10 o'clock, Miss Finch had retreated to the furthest end of the room, near a tall window dressed in blue damask, where the candle smoke collected, and the music arrived muffled and late. That was where Nicholas Wycliffe found her. I must tell you about the Duke of Wycliffe as he was that night, because the room's response to him matters. He was not beloved by London society. He was feared, which is a different thing entirely, and in my experience carries considerably more weight. 6 years at war had made him quiet in the way that deep water is quiet, composed on the surface with something very powerful moving underneath. He did not smile easily. He did not dance willingly. He had attended every ball this season, at the insistence of his solicitor and his dying aunt's written wish, and he had spent each of them standing near the wall with a glass of claret, watching the proceedings with the expression of a man studying a foreign country he had no plans to colonize. He was also, and this is relevant, the most desired unmarried duke in 3 counties. Every mother in the room knew his name, his holdings, and his income. Every unmarried daughter had been coached. When he moved through the ballroom, a kind of tidal attention followed him. Dresses rearranged themselves, conversation elevated, laughter pitched itself half a note higher. He appeared to notice none of it. I was watching him when he stopped. He was crossing the room toward the door, I thought. I assumed, as I always assumed, that he was escaping. He had spoken to the host, observed propriety, and now meant to leave. But he did not leave. He slowed, mid-step, as though something had interrupted his thinking. Then I followed the angle of his gaze and found it fixed on Miss Finch. She was reading. She had produced, from somewhere I cannot account for, a small volume and had opened it against her wrist, and she was reading it in the corner of a ballroom containing 400 guests and every burning chandelier in Dunmore House, with the same unhurried attention she might have given a garden bench on a summer afternoon. As though the laughter, the music, the silk and the sneers were not her concern, as though she had decided, quietly and without fanfare, that if the ball would not include her, she would simply be somewhere else inside her own mind. Wycliffe watched her for perhaps 30 seconds. Then something shifted in his face that I have never seen there before, and have tried many times since, to find the proper word for. It was not pity. It was recognition, as though he had been looking, without knowing it, for exactly this. He changed direction. The room noticed. Of course the room noticed. Nothing the Duke of Wycliffe did in public went unremarked, and he was walking now with clear purpose toward the one corner of the ballroom no one had thought to watch. Cordelia Vane saw him first. I watched her expression perform a rapid series of calculations and arrive. with a small smile at the conclusion that he must be heading for her. He was not. He stopped in front of Miss Alara Finch. She looked up from her book. She did not scramble to hide it or color with embarrassment. She simply looked up, calmly, and waited. "Miss Finch," he said. He had a low voice, the kind that carried without effort. "I am told you speak 4 languages. 5, she said without blinking. "I acquired Portuguese last winter." It seemed the practical choice, given the circumstances. There was a pause. "What circumstances?" "My employer at the time had a habit of conducting his most important correspondence in Portuguese," she said. "He believed it ensured privacy. It stopped ensuring privacy in January." Something crossed the Duke of Wycliffe's face that I had genuinely never witnessed in 6 years of close friendship. He smiled. A real one, not the tight courtesy of ballrooms. A smile that began at the corner of his mouth and reached slowly, and with apparent surprise, his eyes. "Would you honor me with the next dance, Miss Finch?" he said. The room had gone, in increments, almost entirely silent. This was not the silence of an empty room. This was the silence of 400 people holding their breath in precise unison. I heard the candles. I heard the faint complaint of Cordelia Vane's fan snapping open somewhere behind me. Miss Finch closed her book. She looked at him for a moment, not with calculation, not with triumph, not with any of the expressions I might have anticipated from a young woman suddenly receiving the attention of the most powerful man in the room. She looked at him as though she were considering whether she liked him. "I warn you," she said, "I am not fashionable." "No," he agreed. "That is precisely why I'm asking." She took his hand. What followed is not easily described to someone who was not present. The Duke of Wycliffe led Miss Alara Finch, in her old-fashioned rose gown, with her ivory clip and her 5 languages and her borrowed hymns, to the center of the ballroom floor. The musicians, trained to read the room's intent, resumed the waltz without being asked. And Nicholas Wycliffe danced with her, not at the margins, not as a polite gesture executed and concluded quickly, but for the full length of the piece, his attention entirely on her face, as though no other person in the room possessed any interest for him whatsoever. Which, for those 4 minutes, I believe was entirely true. When the music ended, he did not release her hand. He turned, still holding it, to face the room. The room, all 400 of its silk-gowned, pearl-strung, candle-lit inhabitants, was still watching. Cordelia Vane, I should note, was not watching. Cordelia Vane was studying her shoes with an industry that suggested she had never found them more fascinating. "Miss Finch," Wycliffe said, and his voice carried across the room with the effortless certainty of a man who has given orders that were always obeyed. "Will you permit me the supper dance as well?" It was not a small request. A man who took a woman's hand for the supper dance was not conducting an experiment in charity. He was making a declaration. Every person in that room understood it. Every mother with a daughter understood it first and deepest. Miss Finch looked at him again with that quiet, considering attention. Then she said, "I believe I can spare the time, Your Grace." He smiled again, the second time in one evening. I counted it because I had never managed to provoke even 1 in 6 years of genuine effort. I will tell you how it ended, because endings matter in this kind of story, and this one is worth the telling. They married in November, at the small chapel on the Wycliffe estate near the northern coast, with 40 guests and no pomp and a great deal of Portuguese spoken in the vows, which Wycliffe had learned between August and October with a dedication that, he confided to me privately, had been considerably more difficult than the Portuguese correspondence had led him to expect. Miss Finch, the Duchess of Wycliffe, I should say, wore ivory silk on that day, not borrowed, not old-fashioned, her own chosen by her own hand, simply cut, and on her, the effect was such that I heard 3 separate guests remark that they could not imagine why anyone had ever looked elsewhere in any room she had occupied. Nicholas Wycliffe, standing at the chapel door waiting for her, had been still for 20 minutes. I stood beside him. At the moment she appeared at the far end of the path, I watched every last remnant of the coldness the war had put in him dissolve as completely as a frost in April sunlight. "You knew, did you not?" I said quietly. From the moment she refused to hide her book, he did not look at me. He was watching her walk toward him through the fallen leaves. "I knew," he said. "From the moment I heard her laugh at herself in January for spending an entire month learning Portuguese to outwit a man who turned out to have 3 dictionaries. He went to meet her halfway, as though he could not, once she was visible, stand still and wait for the world to bring her to him. As though the distance between them, any distance, was finally more than he could bear. I folded my hands behind my back and let them go. Some stories, if you are fortunate enough to witness the whole of them, need no addition. They are already, in every particular, complete.